The Black Hand and the young Bosnians had different motives for killing Ferdinand. The young Bosnians wanted to destroy Austro-Hungary and live in an idyllic South Slav federation. Apis and the Black Hand wanted a greater Serbia free of foreign domination. Gavrilo Princip did not understand that his revolutionary ideas were actually being manipulated. The Serbian government learned that some weapons had crossed the border, but they did not know what the weapons were intended for. They did not want any trouble right after the end of the Balkan War, with all their internal problems with the military leadership. And they did not know how exactly they should warn Franz Ferdinand, who had received many unspecific warnings before his visit to Sarajevo. 3 years later, the Serbian government sentenced Apis to death after a mysterious trial in Thessaloniki, about which almost nothing is known except that Apis's sentence was in fact connected with his role in the Sarajevo assassination. Shortly before the assassination, members of the Black Hand Council voted to cancel the plan, but it was already too late to recall the assassins. It was clear that Princip was determined to go through with it, regardless of the warnings and orders from Belgrade. The 28th of June, 8 a.m. If the main organizer, Danilo Ilic, had hesitated a few days before, on the 28th of June, he nevertheless decided that the assassination should be carried out. He brought 3 new conspirators into the group and gave them revolvers, although 2 of them had never fired a shot. Ilic went to Vlainic's confectionery shop to meet Grabež and Čabrinović. Nedeljko Čabrinović left his house with a heavy heart. He had had an argument with his father because the old Čabrinović wanted to put up an Austrian flag in honor of Franz Ferdinand's arrival. When they questioned him later, he said, "I gave my mother the pocket knife and watch that my father gave me 3 years ago." At the hearing, he said, "Then I ran off and wept bitterly for 10 or 15 minutes because I felt sorry for my sisters." With his last few pennies, he bought a bouquet of flowers and sent it to a girl called Jela Uljarević. At 8:15, Čabrinović was in Vlainic's confectionery shop, where he found Trifko Grabež and Danilo Ilic. Grabež asked him if Princip had told him where to stand, to which Čabrinović replied that he knew his position. Then he ate 3 cakes. When Princip arrived, they went to the back room, where Princip gave him a bomb and the poison wrapped in paper. Danilo Ilic ordered the conspirators to take their positions on the road by the riverbank. From the confectionery shop, Čabrinović headed down Apel Quay, where he met his friend Toma Vucinović. He went with him to the photographer Josef Schrei in the Circus Square. Čabrinović said in court that he had thought he should leave to posterity a photograph taken on that very day. Danilo Ilic took Trifko Grabež back to his place to give him a gun and a bomb. Gavrilo Princip was waiting from 9 a.m. on the Apel Quay with a gun and a bomb under his waist. Vaso Čubrilović and Cvetko Popović were also in position. Archduke Franz Ferdinand and Sophie arrived in Sarajevo on a train at 9:28. Although the Koteks, Sophie's family, were one of the oldest aristocratic families in Bohemia, under the Habsburgs family law, they were considered commoners. According to her title, Sophie could not sit next to her husband in the royal carriage, in the royal box at the opera, nor could she be buried in the Habsburg family tomb. But outside Austria, in the countries under their military rule, things were different. So on this beautiful summer day in Sarajevo, the Duchess of Hohenberg would finally receive all the honors as wife of the heir apparent. The armed assassins walked along the bank for more than an hour without the police noticing them. Although warnings had come from several different sources about what could happen in Sarajevo, security was poorly organized. Ferdinand and Sophie were riding in an open carriage to the town hall. When the 6-car imperial motorcade passed an ambush of assassins, 4 of them did nothing. The first one was Mehmed Basic, a 27-year-old carpenter who had a bomb. When the Imperial motorcade passed him, he did nothing. A police officer was standing nearby, and Mehmed Basic feared that a failed attempt could spoil the other's chances. He was the only assassin who managed to escape after the assassination. The main organizer of the plot, 24-year-old Danilo Ilic, had no weapons. After the trial, Ilic was executed. Vaso Chubrilovic, a 17-year-old student, carried a gun. Ilic had recruited him at the last moment. He also didn't act, fearing he would accidentally hit the Duchess Sophie. According to Austrian law, there was no death penalty for juvenile offenders, so he was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Cvejo Popovic, an 18-year-old student, tried nothing, claiming he didn't see the car because he was short-sighted. He served 13 years in prison. Trifko Grabej, a 19-year-old Bosnian, had studied in Belgrade, where he had befriended Princip. He also didn't act. At the trial, he said he was afraid he would hurt women or children standing nearby. He died in prison. Nedeljko Čabrinović, just to make sure he would hit Franz Ferdinand's car, asked a detective who was watching the Imperial motorcade instead of the audience, "Which one is His Majesty's car?" To which the excited detective replied, "The third one." At that moment, Čabrinović pulled out a bomb from under his waist, struck the fuse against a lamppost, and hurled it in the direction of the Archduke's green feathered hat. But the bomb did not go off at that point, exploding instead right in front of the next car and injuring more than a dozen people. Čabrinović swallowed the poison and jumped over the fence into the river Miljacka. The poison did not work, and the police caught him. Princip had an excellent opportunity to shoot when the Archduke's car stopped after Čabrinovic's bomb. At the first hearing, he said, "I ran and wondered who it was that did it, because I had already decided to do it myself. In the excitement, I failed to see the air, I just saw them quickly driving off." When he heard that the attempt had failed, he thought about where to stand, having read in Bosanska Pošta where the motorcade would go. He paused at the corner of Apel Quay and Franz Joseph Street near Maurice Schiller's store. When the Imperial car stopped in front of the town hall, the mayor of Sarajevo warmly welcomed Franz Ferdinand. "Our hearts are full of joy on the occasion of the most gracious visit with which your highnesses have deigned to honor the capital of our land." "Mr. Mayor," interrupted the Archduke, "what is the use of your speech? I come to Sarajevo on a friendly visit and someone throws a bomb at me. This is outrageous." The Archduke's anger should have been directed at the governor of Bosnia, Oskar Počerek, who failed to take appropriate security measures. Despite the warnings, there were only 120 police officers on duty that day.
Nešto kasnije, oko 10 sati, tokom prijema u vijećnici, Ferdinand je pitao Počereka da li vjeruje da će neko na njih baciti bombu dok budu odlazili iz vijećnice. A Počerek je na nevjerovatno pitanje Franca Ferdinanda odgovorio da je siguran da drugog napada neće biti. Bilo bi najnormalnije da su Franz Ferdinand i Sofija ostali u vijećnici dok ne dođe dovoljan broj vojnika, dio od onih 70.000 stacioniranih u blizini grada, i da se oni rasporede po ulicama kao obezbjeđenje.
Počerek's behavior could be explained only if he had received assurances that if something were to happen to Ferdinand, there would be no investigation. According to the original plan, the Archduke was supposed to return to Apel Quay and turn into Franz Joseph Street, but in the hall he changed the plan. They decided to listen to the Duchess's suggestion and head straight for Apel Quay to the military hospital to visit one of the officers wounded by the bomb. The main objective of the new plan was to thwart any conspirators who might be lurking in the crowd. No one from the Archduke's entourage or from the police informed the drivers about the change of plan, and no one said there was no need to take a turn into Franz Joseph Street. Count Harrach, an Austrian general, stood on the left footboard of the royal car with his sword drawn, ready to protect Ferdinand and Sophie with his life. When the first car reached the bridge, it took a right turn and went into a side street. The Archduke's driver followed the original plan and turned into Franz Joseph Street. When Poczarek realized the mistake, he ordered the driver to stop and go back. The confused driver hit the brakes and began backing up. He stopped at the corner right in front of Gavrilo Princip. Princip shot. When he saw the Archduke bend, he turned the gun on Poczarek. He would have killed him if Sophie hadn't thrown herself in her final act of her great love, grabbing Ferdinand and getting directly in the line of fire of the second bullet. She was already dead when Ferdinand muttered, "Sophie, Sophie, live for our children." 45 minutes later, Princip was telling Judge Pfeffer, "When I stopped on the corner of the Latin Bridge near Schiller's store, I heard the crowd cheering, 'Long live.' After a moment, the first car appeared, and I tried hard to see the heir apparent, whom I knew from the newspapers. When the second car arrived, I saw a lady and a green general's hat, and I recognized the heir apparent. I was standing 2 or 3 feet from Schiller's store at point C when the automobile came from the town hall, that is, from point A. It turned as if they wanted to go into Franz Joseph Street toward point D. But at point B, at maybe 5 paces, the automobile stopped. At first, I intended to throw the bomb, but because the bomb was screwed closed, it would be hard for me to open. I drew the revolver and raised it against the automobile without aiming. I even turned my head as I shot. I fired 2 shots, one after the other. I believe I fired twice, perhaps more, but I'm not sure because I was very excited. This is also why I did not want to throw the bomb, because I didn't have the strength to do it. Then people started beating me. Someone took my gun and the bomb fell out." Princip said at his hearing that he had managed to put the poison into his mouth while the officers were beating him. The assassination was full of amazing coincidences, amateurishly organized, almost impossible to carry out. Everything went wrong, and the attempt failed several times, until the imperial motorcade stumbled upon Gavrilo as if they had been looking for him in all of Sarajevo.
Tog suđenja bio je skriven od javnosti. Zvanični izvještaji slati su u Beč i tamo nestajali. Tek nakon nekoliko godina kopije izvještaja nađene su u Sarajevu. To je vjerovatno razlog zašto danas u svijetu postoji mnogo pogrešnih predstava o ovoj zavjeri.
All the conspirators were arrested. The trial was held in the divisional court inside the military prison in Sarajevo. The state prosecutor charged 22 individuals with intending to forcibly alter the boundaries of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, namely to secede Bosnia-Herzegovina from the monarchy and annex it to the Kingdom of Serbia, as well as with ambush assassination. 80 people were called as witnesses, and a lot of evidence material was read at the trial. In his courageous defense of the conspirators, Rudolf Zistler, a young attorney and well-known socialist from Sarajevo, argued that the South Slavs living within the borders of the Habsburg monarchy had a right to self-determination, and that the defendants were not guilty of treason due to the legal status of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He cited the decisions of the Berlin Congress, based on which Austria-Hungary had won the right only to occupy Bosnia and Herzegovina, but not the right to annex it, because sovereignty was still in the hands of the Sultan, the holder of state power in Turkey. The assassins insisted that it was their idea to carry out the assassination, that no one from Belgrade had talked them into it, and that the Komitas only helped them get the weapons and cross the border. Princip said, "I am a South Slav nationalist, aiming for the unification of all South Slavs, and I do not care into what form of state as long as it is free from Austria." Asked by the judge how they intended to achieve this political unification of the South Slavs, Princip replied, "At this moment, we imagined a European war in which Serbia and Yugoslavia would gain such strength that it could break away from Austria. These are the ideas of idealistic youths. There are many others who think differently." 3rd of October, 1914. The verdict was read out 5 days later. The conspirators who were of age were sentenced to death. Others, including Princip, were sentenced to long imprisonment. Some survived the war and were later released. Princip died in prison of tuberculosis.